The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got...
All right, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to another DFS Army Bold Call Fantasy Football Podcast. This is our New Year's Day tradition, and I've got my man, Season Long Says, with me. And what we're going to be doing today is breaking down the first round, maybe two rounds, of the 2021 NFL Draft. Way too early, not NFL, Fantasy Draft, way too early version.
Yeah, with this exercise, good morning, by the way. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, and we do this exercise every year. And the purpose of it is we've just come off the season. Yes, there's a little bit of bias of what happened at the end of the season, but generally, I think this kind of bias is good. For example, right now, Saquon Barkley is out of our mind. Like, where are we going to rank him when we do our first and second round? Like, where do we think he's going to be drafted? Or players that finished really strong. Players, like Stephon Diggs, who won people fantasy championships. Will he show up in the first round? And what we often do is when we go and we actually do our draft kit in July and August, is I'll come back and I'll listen to this podcast. I want to see where my thoughts were right after the season. So this is helpful for me as we start to form the DFS Army draft kit and all the rankings moving forward for our redraft leagues.
Absolutely. My favorite thing about these episodes that we do is just how much gets stained and changed like over the course of a long off season, where by the time like next year August rolls around, our top 10, our top 15 might look really, really different. And that might be because of influence, outside influence, things like that, to the point where we like to go back and check out what we ranked right as the season was coming to an end. So it just kind of brings you back around to what your feelings were when the games were live, rather than, all this extra analysis and what I always call one of the biggest issues, which is, the speculation we do in the offseason that's often wrong. So hopefully this episode, we're going to break down the first round and get our thoughts down right now as the season's fresh. And then we're going to compare it to back in July and August of next year and see kind of what differed, where we were wrong or right. And then we can see how we went right or wrong.
And I think you made an interesting point when you talk about speculation, because, as a general guiding principle, when we're doing the first round, when you're making your first pick to build your not dynasty, but your redraft team, I think you don't need to aim for upside. I think the idea is to bank safe production, and you're going to see that as I rank. And, I know that sometimes that you want to go for the upside. You want to swing for the fences in the first round. And we often say that you can't win your fantasy draft in the first round, but you certainly can lose it. And you're going to see that as we go through. So I think without further ado, I will give you the first pick, Geek. And what we'll do is I envision that you'll pick your player. And then if there's any discussion to be had on that player, or if I'm in disagreement, and vice versa, where that player should be going, we'll have a discussion. So hopefully we'll get through the top 24. I imagine probably not. I'm hoping we can get through the top 15. So for our purposes, it's going to be a PPR draft with starting one quarterback. So in our rankings, obviously in Superflex, which is start two QBs, we would have quarterbacks in the first round. We're not going to. And we're going to assume 3 receivers and a flex, tight end, regular scoring. So with the first pick in the 2021 way too early draft, Geek, who you taking if you're on the clock in a high stakes league?
Listen, I think the first pick is very, very easy. I do want to say, though, before we actually start the draft, because I do want to put a caveat. We had a really interesting season this year where early pick running backs really failed, where a lot of wide receiver talent was shining, and the wide receivers certainly scored more than the running backs this year. So I think that we might see, that shift of focus will carry over to next year. It's just how fantasy always is. If the wide receivers worked one year, we're going to see a lot more wide receivers being taken earlier compared to running backs. It's just,
Michael Thomas was a consensus top 5 pick. He was the wide receiver 1 on every board. If you took him in the first round, you may not agree.
Yeah, but he was about the only one, right? Most of the early wide receivers did have success and were great successes, and the early running backs were shit. Now, with all that being said, I've got one player here that is a wide receiver and a running back all wrapped into one. He didn't put too much wear and tear on the tires this year as he's been out all season, and that's the GOAT himself, Christian McCaffrey. I don't think that there needs to be too much consensus or discussion here. McCaffrey,
well, you know what was good
player when he's in the game.
You know what was good about McCaffrey? When the few times we did see him, he gave you 30 fantasy points each time. So it's a little different than when we get to Barkley, where the injuries are adding up. But with McCaffrey himself, is that even when he was out, when he came back, you got reminded why. And so just moving on to number 2, and we'll tie this in. I mean, obviously, I think we're in agreement that Dalvin Cook should be the 1.2 now. If you saw Cook go 1 overall in a draft, that wouldn't bother you in any way. You couldn't fault someone for taking Cook, right?
I do fault him, yes.
Do you think it's that much of a difference between McCaffrey and Cook? So
yes.
Now, this year, Dalvin Cook had 17 touchdowns, I think, if we could check that out. I mean, he's not going to have that next year, but he had 45 receptions. I think that next year he'll be back more in the 55 receptions like he was the year before. He was in the 60 receptions.
Speculate.
Well, no, it's not, because 2 years ago he had 60 receptions. I mean, this year they threw to him a little less. It was more touchdowns. So even if we project him for like 11 touchdowns next year, I think the uptick in catches should counterbalance that. Even though he's a slam dunk too, I wouldn't blame anyone. He's the identity of that team, Dalvin Cook. And again, we're not going to quibble. Quibble? Is it quibble or quabble? Quibble over the top 2 picks, but these are our 1 and 2 in any order you like, right?
I don't even think it's any order. It has to be McCaffrey first. I'm going to give you a reasoning for Cook next year, and it's a reasoning that you've taught me over the years, and which I agree with, which is this dude had a massive workload this season. He is known to get hurt. He is known for, getting dinged up, and he's coming off a season with a massive amount of volume, and, the propensity for injury after a volume season like this is a little bit higher. So, McCaffrey's coming off a year where he basically just rehabbed and kind of rested. He didn't put a lot of wear and tear on those tires. So, yeah, I do have an issue with anybody who would take Calvin Cook ahead of. And McCaffrey's such a greater PPR asset. I just don't even think it's close. And on that note, I think it's important to note that we are drafting based on full 1-point PPR as all leagues should be.
We said that. Yeah.
As all leagues should be.
All right,
I do want to hit up after this a little thought on just the quarterback position for super flexers, which I think we've talked about is the method of the future. But
yeah,
all right. So Dalvin Cook number 2, totally in agreement. This is where I think now at pick number 3, we're already starting to get into some discussion. Some potential. I'm going to go with Derrick Henry as my number 3 running back next year. Now, Derrick Henry is not a safe pick in terms of the floor. He has a lower floor than other players. And I'm debating here between, the debate here is between, I'm still looking at the running back position. Although, man, if I could get out of my running backs and just say, you know what, I might take a Devonte Adams here, possibility.
Yeah, well, I think that I have Henry at 3 as well. And the reason is, yes, Devonte Adams has a higher ceiling, probably will score more points than him, but just from looking at the board, you'll be able to get some receivers you're really happy with next round. The running back situation will not be as good. So just this is the perfect example of draft strategy, taking the player who may or may not score more points, but position scarcity really does play into it. So I'm in agreement. If I was in a draft and my money was on the line, I'm with you taking 3. We'll just slide right. Even in PPR, by the way, Derrick Henry has a safe floor, monster ceiling. Lock it in. There's nobody you feel better about in the draft from a running back perspective. Guy's never even on. He's never even on the injury report.
I can make arguments against some players because right here, I think people are watching, going, "Wait, did you forget Kamara is a thing?"
Well, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to knock Kamara at this spot, but there's a reason we haven't gotten where I'm not picking him. So I'm putting in Derrick Henry. I'm taking the touchdowns with the touchdown scorer.
By the way, and going back to Dalvin Cook, he's got 17 touchdowns.
Yeah, he has a lot of touchdowns, but touchdown regression is always a thing.
Yeah, but regression to what? To 11? I'll sign up for 11 touchdowns right now. Anyway, just
above Christian McCaffrey and his 100 receptions.
Well, again, what we already discussed.
Yeah,
that. Hey, by the way, audience member, you tell us. Comment right now. Who would you rather take at 1-1? If you comment Christian McCaffrey, you could put CMC or put Dalvin Cook. If you're in the chat, let us know who you would take at 1-1 next year. We want to hear from you. Also, just give us a quick like, hit that heart button, helps us out. And if you're so inclined, share. All right, Geek. So you said Derrick Henry at 3. You mentioned Devonte Adams. He's my clear-cut 4 over the next player, the next running back. He was just too dominant. Devonte Adams, I think I forget the exact stat, but he is about to eclipse the PPR per game number, the biggest number ever in fantasy since the Super Bowl era. I have to go check exactly what the stat is, but Devonte Adams is on a historic fantasy points per game track right here. We'll see what happens in the last game, but I just, if for people to call him an old guy heading into his age 28 season is ridiculous to me. This is peak production year. Aaron Rodgers, he's obviously we think of him a lot differently than we did last year. He is the MVP of the league this year, not Pat Mahomes, in my judgment. Are we going to even argue why Devonte Adams should be the 4th pick?
No, I mean, at some point there is a discussion or an argument, what you said about positional scarcity. So you might say, well, I want running backs early because they're hard to get late. But Adams is such a scorer, and he's such a points machine that you can't ignore him. He's also more consistent than most running backs, which is not what we expect. But I believe there has been a fundamental shift in how the NFL is just played in general. There's more passing. The wide receivers are more consistent. So this idea of needing a running back early because they deliver that consistent 15 point, it's just not as important anymore. It's more about positional scarcity, and there just aren't a lot of workhorse running backs that you're going to get late. But there's no Dalvin. There's no Devonte Adams late. Some wide receiver who's going to knock out 28 to 35 fantasy points every single week because that's what he do. So yeah, you go.
Is there any rankings where is there any situation where you're not putting Devonte Adams as your redraft 1-1? Like, is there anyone else that's even in contention?
You're talking about at the wide receiver position.
Oh yeah, wide receiver 1.
Yeah, as my WR1. No, there's
nobody else. Right. See, after Adams, there's like a cluster of like 6 guys, which I won't fight if anyone has this guy at 2, this guy at 4, this guy at 6. But Adams, I'm just going to lock him into my ranking sheet right now as the wide receiver 1, and then I'm going to worry about the rest. So
he's the Christian McCaffrey of the wide receiver position.
Okay, so I think we have a consensus top 4 of McCaffrey, Cook, Henry, and Adams. This is where it's going to get interesting. I think we're going to differ a little bit here. Who do you have at 5? If you're on the clock and those 4 are gone, 2021 redraft league, Geek, who are you taking at pick 5?
I'm going to give you just some thoughts that are going through my head as this pick comes up. You have Alvin Kamara and Saquon Barkley sitting there at the running back position.
Can I give you a spoiler alert, by the way? I don't have Saquon Barkley in the first round.
That's good, but they're sitting there, right?
Yeah.
And your average person is looking at these guys. Saquon Barkley has never shown that he could be good. He's just been all potential, but we've never seen it from him. So
his rookie season was historic, Geek. Saquon Barkley.
It wasn't his. No, it wasn't. That is googly eyes. That's like the fucking guys who think that Carson Wentz was good. Yeah, he had a good year. He did not have. He didn't have a Christian McCaffrey like season. He did not have. I don't agree that it was historic. He had a good year, but he didn't show that he is Christian McCaffrey level. He had a couple of 28 pointers. He wasn't putting up 35-point games multiple weeks. He had a few of them. So he's shown greatness, but he plays for a team that loses, and I just don't like it. Now, the issue with Kamara, and I love Kamara potentially in this spot, the only issue for me with Kamara is if Drew Brees is gone, he hasn't shown that he's that level of good with Taysom Hill. So I don't want Kamara here because I think that Taysom Hill at the helm for the Saints adds an element of sketchy to it. So I'm going to go a little bit different here. I'm going with, and you're not going to like it, I'm going with Michael Thomas. I'm going right back to him.
You know what? I don't hate it, and I'll tell you why. I don't have him there. I have him a little bit later on, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Everything that went wrong could go wrong for Michael Thomas, but he was on a historic pace. We just use that word a little bit liberally, but I think it's appropriate for him. I mean, he was that 140 catch season, and by the way, he performed well with Taysom Hill. And I got a stat for you right here. Michael Thomas has had 16 career games, Geek, without Drew Brees. He's actually more fantasy points per game without Drew Brees than with.
Been fine. By the way, I thought he looked great with Taysom Hill.
Yep.
And I think he's fine as long as he's healthy, and I'm not going to judge his health. He had some health issues this year. I just can't get
mental health.
What's that?
Mental health issues. He punching teammates.
I'm not a fucking psychologist. I'm not a fucking therapist, okay? All I know is when the guy's on the field, he's fucking money, right? And Taysom Hill only had eyes for him. So give me that PPR beast. I think you might be able to get Thomas a few picks later this year, so I'm not sure that would be considered a value play. But if I'm on the board and I have to choose between Kamara or Michael Thomas or some of these other names of running backs that are going to be sort of talked up in this area, I'm going Michael Thomas. Let me get my PPR points. Let me crush it.
Yeah. Let me see where I have Thomas in my early rankings. I may hit. Okay, I have him a little bit later towards like the turn, but yeah, it's fair. I wouldn't argue it.
I mean, there's other wide receivers we could talk about here that are great also, but it's just give me Michael Thomas. He's the focal point of his offense. There's no other wide receiver on that team that can command targets at all. Emmanuel Sanders, another year older, and they don't like to. And Taysom Hill don't like to. I mean, what's better, Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston? It's a win, no matter.
Well, it's going to be Taysom Hill. I mean,
no, he's going to be the and I'm ranking him as such.
I think that Michael Thomas's ADP. I mean, these are just our rankings. This is how we would do it. But I think his ADP by March is going to be the second round. I think he'll be out of the top 15. Right. I think that players like Metcalf, Hopkins, Steph Diggs will all be taken ahead of him, and I think that's that could be wrong. But yeah. Anyway, so if I was on the clock at 5, my number 5 guy, and I'll call it 6 because you took him at 5. I actually have Jonathan Taylor at 5.
Okay.
He to me, with the strong finish, we talked about position scarcity. He's not he's not Derrick Henry. He's not Dalvin Cook. He's not Christian McCaffrey as far as the safety of him because Nyheim Hines is still there to catch passes. But I saw enough to feel good about taking him ahead of the next group of receivers or even Travis Kelsey. I saw our guy Auburn in the chat asked about Travis Kelsey. We're getting to him. He is a first round pick, but just wanting a running back, I felt comfortable taking Taylor at 6. I have him at 5. I told you, but you already took Michael Thomas, so that's my pick at 6.
Again, that is positional scarcity over what I think total fantasy scoring will be. But I like Jonathan Taylor a lot. And by the way, they're throwing to him a little bit now. So, he looks like a well-rounded back. I'm all about Jonathan Taylor.
Good offensive line
early.
Yeah, I'm curious to what they're going to do at quarterback. I think that Phillip Rivers did enough for them to at least bring him back. I would hope that they look elsewhere, but I wouldn't shock me if the Colts, because I don't think Phillip Rivers, they're not going to, the Colts are going to be 11-5 if they win and miss the playoffs, by the way. I know that a couple things have to happen for them to make the playoffs. Not only do they have to win, they need I forget who they need they need Houston to beat. Who does Houston play? I knew this off
Tennessee.
Right. They need Houston to beat Tennessee, and they need to win for them to get in. There's one other scenario in which they can get in, but and that, by the way, could happen. But in all likelihood, if the probability, the chances are that an 11-5 Colts, and by the way, like a 6-win or 7-win Giants team might get in, but the 11-win Colts. So I don't think Rivers is the reason they lost. I like Taylor there. You're up, man.
I hope just talking about the team, they need to get rid of Rivers. They need a real quarterback over there.
We'll get, when we get into our, I think Rivers played better than I thought he was going to this year, but I agree with you. Obviously, if you can get an upgrade, even to like the Andy Dalton level, of, they could probably do better. We'll see. They're not going to have a very high pick. And do you really want to throw a rookie quarterback out there when you have a team built to win now? All right, Geek, you are up at pick 7. Just to review really quick, McCaffrey went 1 in our draft. Dalvin Cook went 2, Henry 3, Devonte Adams, first wide receiver at 4. You took Michael Thomas at 5, and I took Jonathan Taylor at 6. You're up at pick 7, Geek.
All right, pick number 7, I'm going with Jaguars phenom James Robinson, paired up with Trevor Lawrence. He'll burn your food like Florence. He'll run up in your crib like his name is Search Warrants.
I like it. Yeah, I mean, there's nobody. It's funny. Out of all these great rookie running backs, he ended up being the best one, the undrafted guy. And if you listen to us, we told you in the preseason before your drafts to pick him up. We were on top of the Jaguars backfield situation, courtesy of our friends over at Roster Watch. They helped us out with some good on the ground intel there. But we were telling DFS Army to not only just pick this guy up, to draft him. So if you followed our rankings, you actually drafted James Robinson, and he's the reason you ended up in your semifinal. He didn't play in the final. He didn't play in the final, so he didn't help you win the championship.
He didn't help you win, but people who had James Robinson on their team,
they got in the semifinals. They got there.
They made it there.
Yeah,
and
if you didn't,
gotta be in the game.
Yeah, if you didn't, there was another crazy reason why you didn't. So I do not have James Robinson in my first round, but I'm open to the idea of him being there. Now, the reason is that he was either undrafted. I think he was undrafted or he was a 7th round pick. That is, and he did everything above and beyond to show that it's his backfield. But I think the Jaguars, smartly, from a football perspective, will bring in another player, not to overwork him, and also someone that's maybe a Grizzly vet that's really good at pass protection.
Again, you're engaged in speculation.
Well, yeah. Well, again,
engaging. I'm working on what we know right now.
Okay, hang on one second. Hang on one second here. Hang on one second. Because in the first round, I don't want to know what could go right. I'm trying to speculate what could go wrong. And I've told you that. And again, there's just two different philosophies there. There's other players that I could take right here that I know there's no problem of self-destruction. James Robinson by May or August could end up being a top 5 pick if they don't take anyone in the draft. I totally agree with you. But if we're drafting today and we have a $500 league, a $1,000 league, I would be nervous about taking him right there over who I have at 7, but I'll take him at 8. And that's Travis Kelsey in a PPR league. And like I said, it's not about, what James Robinson's upside is. It's, could they bring in a vet? Because now they're going to, the Jaguars are going to want to protect Trevor Lawrence, and they're going to want, just in case James Robinson goes down, they're going to want another running back that's good in pass protection. Maybe a Gus Edwards ends up over there if the Ravens foolishly let him walk. So I'm not faulting you for the pick. I'm just saying, as I want money in the bank, I want boring, and to me, that's Travis Kelsey, and he is going to be. We're up. That was 8. No, you picked it. I took Taylor at 6. You took Robinson at 7, and I take Kelsey at 8.
There we go.
Talk about Travis Kelsey. Do you first round tight end never really works out? Do you think it could work out one more time?
Yeah, I mean, for the positional scarcity, there's always been this benefit to having an elite tight end. Of course, this season it was great, and a lot of Kelsey owners made the fantasy finals, and Kelsey climbed. I base a lot of it on their DFS salary. In fairness, when Kelsey's salary climbed all the way up to 8,500 on DraftKings, that is as elite of a player's salary as you can get. So he is absolute. If you mix DraftKings and actual fantasy football, those salaries that the players get to, they're there for a reason. So in order to get to 8,500, what Kelsey needed to do was be massively consistent. Also at a position group where there's so much garbage at it that it's not only that he's 8,500, it's that most of the tight end group that behind him are at 4K. So he is more than 2 to 3x better.
You know me.
What's that?
You know me. I always like to ask you these weird, quirky questions. Travis Kelsey in PPR leagues, where would he rank in actual production, not projected for next year? Take his PPR points and make him a wide receiver. What wide receiver number is he this year?
I'm going to say definitely within the top 10, maybe number 5.
You got it. He's wide receiver 4.
There we go.
And he was wide receiver 3 before Stephon Diggs blew up last week.
Yeah, and now you might say, well, why don't you take those wide receivers ahead of him? It's because wide receiver 5 and 6 and 7, they're all kind of close, but Kelsey and TE2, the gap between those two players has to be like 100 points. And
so
TE2 being like Darren Waller.
You got it. Yeah. So it's, it's funny. It's this is another stat I heard that I liked. So you nailed it about the difference between him and Waller. But if you took Waller, you were perfectly happy. So now talk about the difference here between Travis Kelsey and TE3, who was Hawkinson. It's the same difference, by the way, between Hawkinson at TE3 and TE35. That's the difference in points.
Yeah.
The difference from Kelsey to Hawkinson, from Hawkinson to TE35.
Essentially what you're doing is you go into every single week with such a massive advantage at that one position. Now, of course, you have a disadvantage at WR1 or RB1, but listen, if it was this year and you think about it, and you got Kelsey in the first round, then you picked up a Mike Gesicki late or some of these other guys, it was fine. Like, there's not that big of a difference between RB5 and RB, and some guy you took late that worked out, like Robinson.
There you go.
Or Gesicki.
Yeah. So okay. So that was
not Gesicki. Gaskin.
Yeah. I mean, you could find guys, and again, if you're talking about an elite RB1, no problem. And there are some elite RB1 still on the board. So you're up at pick 9. Who you taking? You know who's off the board at this point. You're in a draft. The clock is ticking, Geek. You're down to 10 seconds. Who you taking?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm going to bite the bullet, and I'm not happy about it. Actually, no, I'm not biting the bullet yet. I'm not ready for it.
Tick, tick, tick.
I'm not ready for the Kamara bullet. I'm taking Stephon Diggs, historic player, historic season, tied to a quarterback that I love this and every year forward. I'm just going Stephon Diggs, man. I wanted to take Kamara here, but I can't do it. I just can't get past how bad he looked with Taysom Hill. I'm going with Diggs. There is consideration here for Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins. They're in the discussion, but Diggs is such a focal point of his offense. Even more so, Hill, we know, has the smash games, but there's a lot of weapons there. DeAndre
Hill had a monster touchdown year also. I think he's close to like 17 touchdowns.
And great, but he played a whole season without Sammy Watkins.
Sammy Watkins sucks.
It doesn't matter. He absorbs targets. He played a whole season without that. And so we got a version of Hill that didn't have all the weapons in place. Give me Stephon Diggs. They're not doing anything else on that team but throwing to Diggs.
All right, fair. Even with John Brown presumably coming back.
Yeah, I don't realize John Brown and Cole Beasley, they're not taken away from Diggs.
All right, fair enough. That was pick 9, correct?
Yeah.
Yep. So at 10, yeah. All right. So here's the spot where Kamara probably would fall, but his production without Drew Brees concerned me too. So here's a player that you were, and if I'm on the clock and pick 10, I really thought about this because I had a feeling that Kamara would fall this far. And I think in most early best ball drafts, he won't. I think he will go in the top 5. And I understand why. It's perfectly defensible.
By the way, it's funny that we're dropping Kamara, and he's just coming off of like a 59-point explosion game.
With who? With Drew Brees. I mean, we're projecting him without
via the pass. It was via the rush in that game.
Right. But I'm just saying, again, without Drew Brees is how we're making our presumption. And when we all offseason, when we study, when we research, we don't want to make a bad first round pick. Okay. And Kamara has more risk than a typical top 5 pick usually does. And that's why he's here at 10 for me. But I'm still going to pass on Kamara. You and I were high on this player, higher than everyone else. He was going in the 3rd round at this time last year, and we had him in the 1st round. I believe he still belongs here. And that's Austin Eckler, my friend. He is locked. I mean, when Justin Herbert finally took over, it looked like he was going to be the RB1 this season, and then he gets hurt. And what happens when he comes back? He picks up right where he left off. Austin Eckler deserves to be a first-round pick. He will not be in anyone's first round in these way too early drafts. I know a lot of websites do these things. Don't forget about our guy, Austin Eckler. We were high on him last year. He is locked into a contract this year. There's no competition behind him. There's Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly, who is now completely been relegated to third down back. You and I love Justin Herbert for all the reasons that we've talked about last year. We liked him better than Tua. Woo-woo, victory lap. We did it. But I am sticking with Eckler. I like him better than Kamara. Are you with me? I see you nodding. Yes. Are you with me?
I think I have to take Kamara. I just can't. Eckler is great though, and I totally get it. I totally understand the thought process, and he's a PPR beast.
Think about where he would have been without this injury, man.
I don't know, because he hasn't had the great game even since coming back. I do think he's
such a high floor. Such a high floor. Or on Sunday. Such a high
floor. Great. I love Eckler, but that team also does seem to want to split the carries a little bit more than maybe I want in a high draft pick. Eckler's great. I have no problem with it, but I don't think I could pass Kamara there. I think at some point you got to take the guy he's got the role, he's got the talent, and you have to hope that, and this is a little speculation, that you just have to hope that Sean, that the coach will figure out how to get him more involved. That's what you got to hope.
All right. By the way, you know who's been absent from this conversation? There's a certain Dallas Cowboys running back that we haven't even.
Oh, who? Pollard. Well, I can't discuss Pollard.
All right. So that was pick 10. Was that pick 10?
That was pick 11, I think. No, okay. Was that your pick was 10?
Let's go through it again.
McCaffrey, I'm the odd number, so it would be 11 for me.
Okay, so you're up on pick 11. So this is the Kamara spot, right?
You got to take Kamara here. Bite the bullet. They're going to get it figured out in New Orleans. He's still a great talent, maybe the best most talented running back from a wiggle and jiggle point of view. We still have not discussed some other kind of high-end running backs. There's so many great players this upcoming season. You really can't go wrong. Like, look how great of a pick you're getting towards the end of the first round. Like, talk about Kamara, Saquon Barkley still on the board, Tyreek, and all these guys.
So would you take Barkley? Because you said you would take Alvin Kamara above Eckler. Where do you slot Barkley in your personal rankings as of today?
He's not coming off the board yet, so he might come next. But let's see who you take next. But I'm taking Kamara, saying I get it. It's Tyreek. It's Taysom Hill. He hasn't looked that great with Kamara, but they did have one pretty good game together. But I don't expect the PPR goodness that we got from Kamara throughout his career to continue under Taysom Hill. It just won't be there. So with Kamara now, we're just hoping for a normal running back, like your 3 or 4 targets, and just a little bit of volume in the rush.
Cool. Yeah. All right. So I'm picking on the wheel. We're making pretty good time. We're 30 minutes in. We'll continue this for another 20, 30 minutes.
Get the full first 2 rounds in.
Yep. Just want to let everybody know again, you're listening to the DFS Army Fantasy Football Podcast. The Geek and I are going to be here all off season long, every week, talking about best ball, talking about dynasty fantasy football, doing our rankings in Draft Kit early this year, getting it done, updating it weekly, really breaking down. We want to get you. Fantasy football is now a year-round content. People are interested in that, and we are going to give that to you. And go over to DFS Army. It's never too late to sign up for a VIP membership. You can use code SAYS or GEEK, get 10% off. They're still doing basketball over there. You're still doing MMA and everything else. And Geek,
50K winner last night, 200K winner the night before. The basketball's been incredible.
Cool. And we're going to
play NBA. You got to do it. Guys, and my DFS Army people, I know we're football people. Got to check out NBA. Keg's notes and the whole team is spectacular.
Cool. Give this post a like. If you're watching on Twitter, if you're watching live on Periscope, Facebook, or YouTube, just do us a favor. Just give it a quick like. That helps out. That if you're getting value from this podcast, that's how you repay us. Just click the like button. If you're so inclined, hit share.
I just want to point out, this is a podcast that I come back to later on as we're at, in April, in June, in July, when we start to solidify these different thoughts. I want to go back and say, what was I thinking at the end of the season? When we're tempted to take Kamara, pick 4 because consensus ranking has him 3 or 4. I want to be like, no, remind myself. Yeah, after the season, I had this thought and I want to stick with it. So, all right.
Hit me with the action. So I'm going to go. So now we're gonna swap it up a little bit. I'm gonna get 12 and 13, and then you're gonna. So I'm gonna be on the odds, and then you're gonna be on the evens. Okay.
All right. If that's how you want to go.
Yeah. Because I'm on the wheel. All right. Do you want to just keep it how we're going every other? I will go every other. That's fine.
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah. All right. So I'm on the wheel here. I'm going. I'm tempted with some of the wide receivers that are out there, but if I'm the 12th pick, that's what I'm saying. Because like the guy on the 12th pick is going to have both picks, so I want to come from that perspective. I'm going to be able to pick two of these guys. Because if you're picking 12 in your draft, you don't have to decide between one of two guys. You can get two players. So the question is, do I want two running backs? Do I want two receivers? Or do I want 1 and 1? And I haven't really parsed out exactly how I want to do that yet, but I do know that I want boring Nick Chubb. And I'll tell you why. The ceiling is capped with Kareem Hunt there. Kareem Hunt signed a longer-term deal, but Nick Chubb is probably the best running back in the league, or at least one of the top two. He's always his style is ferocious. We know the Browns are a running team. I just want a pick that I don't believe is going to fail there, and that's why I'm taking Nick Chubb. Are there other players that could outscore him? Perhaps, and I know the Geek may or may not agree with me here, but we all know that Nick Chubb is going to be a top 15 pick. I'm just taking him at 12 because he won't come back to me. I'll make my second pick in a minute, Geek, but talk to me about Nick Chubb. I know it's not a thrilling pick, but do you see the logic?
I understand your logic behind the pick. I don't love it. Nick Chubb is, but I don't hate it. Like, Nick Chubb is going to remain a workhorse. He's on a team that wants to run the football. He scores a lot of touchdowns. He gets 20 touches per game, and they do throw to him just a little bit. So it's just not that different. Quite honestly, it's not that different from a Jonathan Taylor pick, who you picked quite a few picks before. I don't think you can go wrong with Nick Chubb. He's definitely not better than Derrick Henry from a volume perspective, because Derrick Henry will get 30 touches in a game. Nick Chubb will almost never cross 20.
The difference is Kareem Hunt. Like, if Kareem Hunt signed with the Tennessee Titans, then I would flip these guys. Like, if Nick Chubb had the backfield to himself, he's the top 5 pick.
Oh, yeah. The only thing that takes him out of it is the fact that Kareem Hunt is there.
And is going to be there for next year.
This is the point for me where I would have pulled the trigger on Saquon Barkley.
Okay, well, that's what I was going to say, is that knowing that I have both picks, he's probably the other guy. So that's why let me just make the pick so you don't get pushed into an auto pick. So yes, Saquon Barkley on the turn, the 12-13, assuming he comes back healthy. But if we're drafting today, now I got my boring guy. That's what I was doing. I was pairing the boring, safe production with a swing for the fences guy, because we all know Saquon Barkley can be a top 3 RB, a top 3 fantasy player. So I would pair those two guys together.
There you go.
Take one safe swing and one upside play with a presumable floor. So there's my 2 picks. So you're up at 2.2, Geek. I don't think there's any controversy over taking Barkley at 2.1 or 1.12, whatever you want to call it.
I'm rubbing my hands together at 2.2 right now, okay? I just want you to know this. And guys, if you're in your draft and you're in this position, I'm rubbing my hands together. You want to know why? Because I'm taking Deandre Swift. He fell to me because everybody who didn't take him is fucking stupid, and I count all the people who... Wait, that was you and me.
Yeah, but by the way, just for context, I have him at 11 over Barkley. I just think that given that when I took a safe guy like Chubb, the Barkley's there. But yeah, he's going to be 11th overall in my rankings, DeAndre Swift.
There you
go.
There you go. I'm rubbing my hands together. You know why? Because Adrian Peterson is no longer there.
Well, more importantly, Matt Patricia's not there.
Matt Patricia's gone. Adrian Peterson's gone. And you know who's the most talented running back that came out of the draft last season? DeAndre Swift. He can do it all. Now, I don't know what the story is with Matt Stafford. Maybe he's with the team. Maybe he's not. I assume that if he's gone, they replaced him with a competent quarterback. If David Blow is going to be the quarterback, I'm not on this play.
No. They'll do better than that.
I know. That's what I'm saying. But as long as there's a competent quarterback,
that could be the Winston spot. That could end up being the Jameis Winston spot.
Fine by me. That's Ross from Friends. Fine by me. Like that.
Were you Friends or Seinfeld? Which one's a better show?
Seinfeld's a better show.
Yeah,
there's no doubt.
Agreed.
But I love Friends also. But Seinfeld's a better show.
Okay.
Fine by me. We're on a break. All right.
Yeah, Swift was our DFS Army Dynasty RB1. Not only before the draft, but even after the draft, when everyone had Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It took a little convincing, but you were on board quickly. I said, in a dynasty format, Swift is the best running back. I thought he should have been taken by the Chiefs ahead of Helaire. That is, I think, is looking like everyone believes that now, as Helaire had a disappointing season. All right, man. So you took Swift at pick.
Swift, and I rubbed my hands together greedily when I did it.
This morning I heard a couple guys on a podcast who I like and respect a lot, and they think that that Swift is more of a third round pick, which obviously I disagree with. You disagree with. We would take him in the late first round and be happy about it. You were rubbing your hands together because you thought 2-2 is a steal. I think
I love it though.
Yeah,
I like that another podcast is saying that because.
And a very credible podcast, by the way. And again,
because when you differ greatly from what could come out to be consensus, that's the best possible scenario.
Yeah, that's where you get the value.
You might be able to wait a little bit. I might, I'm rubbing my hands together at pick 2-2. What if I'm at pick 2-9 and he's still there because that's just how my draft came together? I couldn't be happier. So, and a lot of times what you and I have done early in the season, eventually the ADP catches up. Like last year, we were talking about all these guys who were going in late rounds that should have been first and second rounder, and eventually they made their way up. And it's like, wow.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So I am up at 2.3 Geek, and it's already too late for this for him to be there. I actually have him as my 10th overall player, and I'm just taking DK Metcalf at this point. I know that the finish to the season was a little bit slower and disappointing, but remember it was last year in the playoffs. They're not going to screw around in the playoffs. He's going to have a strong playoff, and then everything's going to come back to where we were. He had just an unbelievable first half of the season. I'm not overly worried about him. Russell Wilson's still in the peak of his powers. There's some other players that you could easily take. I consider DeAndre Hopkins here, and you certainly wouldn't be wrong for taking that. Zeke Elliott certainly deserves consideration, but no, in the second round, I just really want DK Metcalf on my team. I believe that DK Metcalf is more of the guy we saw in the first 8 games than the second 8. And I can understand some skepticism, but that's who my guy would be at 2.3. What's your DK Metcalf take? Where would you rather see him go? Because I know you don't like him here.
I don't like him here. I think he needs to be a little bit further down the list. But here's what I want to kind of give an overall paint view of here, because this is an interesting inflection point in the draft itself. Because in my opinion, the elite tier of running backs is now gone. We have now gone through all of them, and you could mix them up kind of a little bit however you want. By the way, a lot of these names that these are the elite tier to me. There's no one left, and I'm including, you have Aaron Jones, Miles Sanders, Hilaire, Dobbins, Zeke, a bunch of these names, Gibson. They're all good, but
hey, don't forget about RB1 over the last 6 weeks, David Montgomery either.
Oh yeah, David Monty. Okay, they're all part of
one over the last 6 weeks.
I'm well aware. They're all part of the same basket that is like. I think we passed the elite tier, and there's that basket. So now we're looking at the wide receiver position, some other position groups. Sticking with wide receiver, I know you like
2-4. You're up at 2-4.
Metcalf. I'm taking DeAndre Hopkins here.
Yep. Very
PPR beast, volume machine. The offense only getting better. I think that another year of seasoning for Kyler Murray, another year of the two of those guys together. Again, I took Diggs ahead of DeAndre Hopkins purposefully, but I like DeAndre Hopkins in this spot. Tyreek Hill would be my next consideration. So,
he's off the board already, isn't he?
And Hill are ahead of DK Metcalf for me.
Oh, if we didn't take Tyreek Hill yet, that would have been my last pick. I definitely would have taken Hill over Metcalf and Hopkins. So that's just an oversight.
Okay.
All right,
Hill is still on the board there. So
yeah,
I will allow you to make that change.
I'll just take him here because this is where I would have taken DK then at 2.5. So Tyreek Hill 2.5. Obviously, that's an omission. We would have easily taken him in the first 2 or 3 picks. of the second round. So Tyreek Hill, for all the reasons that everybody knows, attached to Pat Mahomes, was a touchdown machine. He's been double-digit touchdowns more often than not. I know he got hurt last year and still had 7. He easily would have had 10. You don't think of Tyreek Hill as a big touchdown guy, but he really is. And it's a two-man show over there, right? I mean, they throw to Kelsey, they throw to Tyreek Hill, and that's kind of it. I mean, there's a couple of guys that catch touchdowns here and there, but those two guys are locked in for production. I think that an Allen Robinson, if they can crack open the safe and bring him over there, like they need another an elite target. Probably Allen Robinson won't end up there, but they need another wide receiver over there just from a football perspective. Easy call, 2-5, Tyreek Hill. Who do you got at 2-6?
All right, so there we go. Tyreek Hill. So I want to make sure we cover. We got Hopkins, Metcalf, Adams, and Hill off the board, and Michael Thomas at the wide receiver position.
Yep.
Right? We've got only one
tight end
taken so far, Travis Kelsey.
Do you want me to recap the whole draft so far quickly?
Well, I mean, I'm just going to quickly. I'm doing it. Right?
Okay.
And at the running back position, we've gone all the way kind of through the elite tier, all the way down to Deandre Swift.
Yep.
And so, again, we're now in a little bit of an inflection point again. Do I go running back here? Do I go wide receiver here? I think I'm going to – man, I'm having a bit of a hard time.
Well, think it out loud. Who are some of the players you're considering at 2-6?
So, I'm not going to touch the tight end yet. Waller needs to wait.
No, I think he's more of like a late third. I mean, if somebody takes him in the third, anytime in the third, he's a good pick. I personally would not do it in round 2. It's defensible. But I wouldn't do it, not with what we have. So who are some of the guys? Just think out loud. Who are you considering here?
At wide receiver here, I'm looking at, some guys with potential, the Justin Jefferson, Calvin Ridleys of the world. I'm of the assumption that maybe Julio Jones, I guess he's going to come back.
No. Julio, this is going to be the first year, 2021, where Calvin Ridley goes ahead of Julio Jones.
I have no doubt that Ridley goes ahead. It's just a question of if Julio Jones retires.
No, he's not retiring, but
he's not going to retire. He'll be back.
He's going to be more like a 5th, 6th round pick in redraft and more like an 8th round dynasty pick this year. He'll be back, but he cannot be relied upon in any way as a top, 15, 20 receiver. So who's it going to be, Geek? I mean, you're on the clock. It's ticking. 2-6. Who do you got?
Usually in these situations, I default to a running back because I like a lot of the wide receivers, but I feel like I don't love any single one, and I'm going to like the next round guy as well. Josh Jacobs is garbage, by the way, Auburn fan. There's no way he's on my list right here. I don't like Josh Jacobs very much at all. I think I'm going to go and I think I'm going to go running back here, and I think I'm going to go with Miles Sanders. And I'm just going to play it a little bit safe there. He's going to get the full workload. Better team now with Jalen Hurts at the helm. Not like a losing team like the Eagles have been under a Wentz regime. I'm assuming that Wentz will be gone and Hurts will be the quarterback. That's a little bit of an assumption. But I do believe that Miles Sanders is very much in play right here. He's not a 100%er, but he's a 70% target share guy at this point or carry share guy on a team that wants to run the football. So I'm going to go Miles Sanders here, but I fully, this is a really tough decision point. It's an inflection point, really.
Yeah,
because
I think
lots of wide receivers I like also.
Sanders is an easy pick there. I love it. I think that in the pro leagues, in the FFPC and the NFFC, he'll be a first-round pick when it's all said and done. When Jalen Hurts is officially anointed the starter, that's just you saw what happened to the Philadelphia offense. It just became a top 10 offense instantly. All right. For me right here, 2-7, I think he'll go earlier than this, and I'm back in on Zeke. You and I talked offline. His big extension that he got hasn't even kicked in yet. He is on the books for the big extension starting next year. It doesn't matter that Tony Pollard was really good, and he was. And it's obvious to anyone with 2 eyeballs that the offense looked better, but we're going to assume Dak's back at some point in the first month of the season. Zeke, the offensive line should get a lot healthier. Zeke Elliott is the player that they paid big money and gave a big extension for. There is no way that he is not a 15 to 18 touch minimum, and I think a 20 touch player moving forward. And everything went wrong for Zeke this year. He was disappointed as a first round pick. But if you get him in the second round, the middle second round, he still has top 5 upside. Try to forget last year and just see what the actual projection forward is. I'm taking Zeke Elliott at 2.8, and I feel like that's a steal.
Yeah, I'm fine with the pick there. You're getting a volume running back in the middle of the second round. Again, scarcity of position is a big deal.
I would take him over James Robinson, who you took in the first round, by the way.
Yeah, so you don't like James Robinson.
No, I do like him, just not in the first round because of the opposite of Zeke. Zeke is locked in. He's going to walk into training camp with 17 touches a game in his pocket. James Robinson had a great season, but my golden rule is I want to see it for 2 seasons before I make you a first-round pick. And I
still remember quite a few scenarios where you had rookie guys come out and look amazing, and then something happened in year 2. I mean, I can go through a laundry list.
Non-pedigree. Like the year Saquon Barkley came out where it was a rookie, everyone had him projected as a top 8, top 5 fantasy pick, and it was for good reason. He was the second or third overall pick in the draft, right?
I can give you a laundry list of guys who had a breakout season and then were never seen or heard from again.
Well, it's the pedigree. It's like, even Trent Richardson, when he came out, you were like, okay, this is a top 10 fantasy player because he was taken in the top 5 of the real NFL draft. James Robinson, the thing that he's not as insulated because of his draft pedigree. He has let's say he has 2 or 3 bad games or average games to open up the season. That's it. Let
me paint the scenario of what I think goes wrong, because I don't think it's 2 or 3 bad games. I think James Robinson proved himself this year. I think what happened, they got rid of other guys they didn't like. They started him ahead of other people, so they clearly liked him. Either that, they definitely didn't like Fournette. One of the two. But here's what happens: these guys get comfortable, so you go from being and you never know psychologically how it's going to affect a player. And I'm going to get into some fucking player psychology here. Okay, here's what happens: guys get comfortable. I've seen it across all sports. You break out and you think you're working so hard. You're an undrafted free agent. You're the scrappiest motherfucker there. The coach notices you. Like, in order to get noticed as an undrafted free agent on your team, you have to be a scrappy motherfucker, right? You got to be that guy that's working harder than everybody else that's in earlier. Now, he gets the role. He's the star now. So one of 2 things happens. Either that hunger, that passion that drove him there remains in his heart, or he gets comfortable. He's out. He's like, yeah, I'm the fucking starting running back for the Jaguars, bitch. And he's getting a little out of shape, losing a little bit of that edge. Like, some players lose it and others don't. So that's the risk. That's why you see these guys year 2 come back. And I'm going to give you a name. Kenyan Drake was that, man. He was a scrappy guy. And then, he had this great finish to a season. He looked amazing. Given the opportunities with Miami, they wouldn't play him. He had a chip on his shoulder. Comes back this year like, yo, I'm the starter, bitch. And just didn't look the same guy. He didn't have the same hunger, the same explosiveness. And I've seen that time and time again. CJ Spiller. Do you remember CJ Spiller?
Yeah. Well, again, I think it was just he was more athletic and didn't. Some guys are just good at football, and that was James Robinson. Other guys are athletic freaks. That's like C.J. Spiller. I mean, James Robinson was in college was a historic. He accounted, I think, for like 80% of his team's offense. I mean, he was one of those type of players. I don't want to get into the head of James Robinson. I still love him as a player. I just think that when you draft pedigree is important in the NFL, and when you are a 7th round or a UDFA, that the leash is a little bit shorter and the tolerance for bad games is less. So again, I'm with you that James Robinson should be a top 30 fantasy pick, certainly maybe even a top 24. Just in the first round of my draft, when I have big money on the line, I want rock solid production. I don't disagree with him at 7. I'd rather have someone like Zeke, who has what I call the insulation, his contract insulation. He has the touches banked. All right, let's move on. Let's finish the round.
My point with him is, if you can deliver like that on a 1-in-15 team that didn't even, that had no chance, no quarterback, nothing going for it whatsoever, what happens when that team improves?
Yeah, well, again, I'm not even doubting you or questioning the upside. We already saw it. The thing that's taking him out of the first round for me is the downside. That's what I want to measure in my first two picks is what's the downside.
I made my pick, right? Did I make a pick yet?
Well, we talked about Zeke at 2.8, at 2.9. Quickly make a pick at 2.9. Let's zip through these last couple.
Here we go. Pick 2.9.
Yep.
You took Zeke Elliott. I'm going back to wide receiver here.
Quick.
I'm gonna grab AJ Brown here.
Okay, 2.9, perfectly defensible pick. We all get it. We're going to zip through and then just have any sort of open discussion. At 2.10, I'm deciding right here if I want Justin Jefferson, if I want Josh Jacobs. But ultimately, I think I've seen enough from David Montgomery to take him there. At RB1 over the last 6 weeks. Geek, who do you got at 2.11?
I like who you were considering. I got to go to Aaron Jones here.
Yep.
Old, reliable.
We're not sure. You think he's a Packer next year?
Assuming he's a Packer,
You're assuming.
I'm assuming that. I don't know if he's not on the same team. We have to change things up.
Well, he's an unrestricted free agent. So
I assume they bring him back. But if they don't, obviously,
I think so too. By the way,
let's see what his situation looks like. By the way, I'm considering Cam Akers in this spot as well.
Yep.
And even J.K. Dobbins, I think, are considerations here. Cam Akers being probably the better, but Cam Akers did not show that he could hold up for a full NFL season. And I do like proof of that.
Okay,
before I start to draft players.
I had 2.10, and so you took Brown at 10.
I took there. I think it's appropriate in the second round.
Okay, yeah. Last pick of the second round. Justin Jefferson is certainly in consideration. Josh Jacobs, and I even think some of the older guys, like I think Kittle. If you want to go for tight end, I wouldn't do it because he's just banged up too much. Keenan Allen certainly deserves consideration, and the other guy who I think. If you want him, you need to take him there because he will be the next pick is Antonio Gibson, especially if they get a good quarterback there, is worthy of consideration. All those guys that we just named, we named probably about 30 guys. You tell us.
By the way, I just want to point out, love Antonio Gibson.
Yeah.
Love him with a better quarterback on that team.
And there will be. No matter what, there will be. I mean,
whoever it is, it's going to be better.
Right.
I want to throw out some I'm going to say some dark horse candidates because we glazed over. We have a couple minutes left. But some of these running backs that like the Miami running back, that's going to be a good spot.
It's going to be Gaskin. Why would they even shop in the running back market when they have a guy that already did it?
But if it's Gaskin in the same role, maybe because they have Ahmed over there also.
Well, what I'm saying is that the Miami running back, because there's going to be some form of committee, doesn't deserve top 24. But you're certainly right. That guy, whoever that is,
I'm giving some credit here to some of these like dark horses.
But we're going to do the third round.
Montgomery, but Cam Akers, I'm throwing in this mix as well. Notice who we didn't call out. Notice we didn't say Josh Jacobs. Notice we didn't say Joe Mixon. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I think the guys who you're not taking tell as much about what you think of these guys as who you do take. Fuck Joe Mixon. That guy cannot make it through a season, and I'm not getting sucked into a top two-round pick on him again. I like him later.
We're consensus is going to have him in the third round. I mean, in best
I'm
ball,
sure they will. Because of consensus. Josh Jacobs, what the hell did he do in a year where his team was great, winning games, and he couldn't fucking produce? So Josh Jacobs, no, I'm sorry, you move down the list for me. Like him in the third round. Not upset if he's my running back, but I don't want him in the first 2 rounds. I don't think he's elite. It's just a lot of who you don't take. We didn't mention Allen Robinson. I think Allen Robinson's an elite.
But he's not. He's an unrestricted free agent.
Yeah, he's going to new teams. I mean,
we don't know. He could stay there. I would like to see. We'll get into a larger discussion about the third round on the next podcast. Remember, we got a lot of content. I personally would like to see Allen Robinson in Detroit. I think he would flourish over there. Indoor stadium, the turf. Hopefully, it's Matt Stafford. But yeah, we'll get into all that. Geek, let's wrap it up. We did the top 24. Way too early rankings.
Really important, guys, to reference this stuff and just remember your thoughts at the end of the season. As we go into next year, what's going to end up happening is consensus will start to congeal around certain situations. We're going to be best ball drafting like in March. You know what I mean? We're going to start best ball. Yeah, like I don't know. We'll do best balls really early, and so you want to one of the nice things about that is you can, much like betting early, where you can get lines, you can beat the closing line. in drafting early, you want to beat the closing line on some of these players. So some of these guys that we suggested higher will not be there in ADP. That's fine. Value-based drafting. If you think Robinson's going to be a 3rd-round pick and I like him as a 1st-rounder, that doesn't mean I'm going to take him in the 1st round. That means I get to be aware, hey, I have this guy ranked really high, but I can get him, in the top of the 2nd round. I'm going to wait and get him there because he's still available. But you're going to
use ADP. Totally. All right, Geek. I'm going to remind everyone to go over to DFS Army. That we still have the fantasy football playoffs where you guys are crushing it over there. Sign up. Use code SAYS. Get 10% off. It's never too late. Use code Geek if you like as well. Sign up over there. Come join us in the Slack chat. Get personalized coaching attention. I'll be hanging out in the Slack chat answering questions about Dynasty, about best ball, all those things. Anything else to add before we close it out?
No, that's it. DFS Army going strong throughout the offseason. Make sure you subscribe to the Bowl Call podcast as well. You mentioned this earlier, but we're going to keep these going throughout the season. We have some fun Super Bowl stuff we're going to be doing ahead of the Super Bowl with like some party ideas and some contest ideas and stuff like that. So tune in for that coming up in a couple of weeks. And all throughout the offseason, we'll be talking the NFL draft itself. We'll be talking Dynasty rankings. We're going to get into. We didn't even talk about super flex rankings and the QB position.
Next week,
the absolute wave of the future, and so in mixing quarterbacks into these discussions, and we'll do some super flex specific rankings as well.
Yep. So, and if I can just remind,
subscribe, all of that good stuff, and we'll be around all off season, keeping you entertained.
Yeah, just a reminder, if you want to follow the Geek on Twitter, he is always putting out entertaining stuff, not just about football, just about, I see you tweeting over there about crazy stuff going on in our society and our government, and I think you have good, even though they're satirical takes, I really do like them. I enjoy them. I strongly advise anyone listening to this, go follow at Foootball Geek, and then give me a follow as well. I'm just going to promote my Twitter at Alan Seslowsky, AlanSeslowsky. I'm also putting out free content every day for DFS Army on my TikTok and on my Instagram. So go follow all of those at Alan Seslowsky, at Foootball Geek. And until next time, we'll be back maybe later this week, maybe next week with another episode of DFS Army Bowl Call Fantasy Football Podcast. Until everyone.
Take care, everyone. Good stuff.
Got the best coaches in the game. We really ain't playing.